the Hub on Hollywood. I'm James.
I'm Jamie.
And we love movies.
One day it'll be the same.
One day it'll be the same. One day we'll be synced up correctly.
Yes, when we're back, in the same studio space, when this is all over, and I know that day will come, James. The day shall come.
Hopefully sooner than later. I've been hearing some mixed news, and so, just fingers constantly crossed. But one thing we don't need to keep our fingers crossed for is how good this episode's going to be.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. That's what people come to us for, the quality content every time.
They demand it. All right, so on this episode, again, everyone, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. If you're watching on YouTube or listening to us on every major streaming service that we have, on this episode, we will be talking about Tiger King. It doesn't end. There's no end in sight for Tiger King, apparently. At least one more episode. They came out with a new episode, and they interviewed a lot of the people that were involved in the documentary, got their perspective of how they felt of the docuseries that doesn't show many people in the best light. So we'll talk about that. Also, Sam Raimi bringing out some big news about the new Doctor Strange sequel, Into the Madness of the Multiverse.
Yeah.
The Multiverse of
Madness. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he's talking about that, and we're going to wrap up a little bit talking about Star Wars. Of course, what would an episode of Hub on Hollywood be without Star Wars? I guess we see an alternative ending or an alternative plot to the movie, and Daisy Ridley speaks out about fan reaction.
That's right. And we continue to beat the dead horse that is the Rise of Skywalker. Cannot wait. But first, James, we're all here, we're in our houses, we're trying to get through this, and what better way to do that than with our streaming services and everything that we are signed up for. I know myself, I've been going back and watching some of my favorite movies, just finding the classics that are, Hulu's got a lot of stuff from the 90s and things like that. But really the main sensation that is helping America keep its sanity and get through this crisis is gay, polygamous, Tiger King, Joe Exotic.
Redneck cowboy Joe Exotic. Woo! It's a gift that doesn't end, huh? That doesn't.
No, it keeps on giving. So we've just the bonus episode has dropped, and I don't know. I gotta say, I've got mixed reactions to it. So just to let our viewers know, this is obviously a spoiler review, but they've got Joel McHale coming in to host this series of interviews with some of the main characters that we saw in the original documentary. No, Carol Baskin was not a part.
No, I understand why.
I would understand why. Also, I wonder if she's preparing her own lawsuit. Did I read that against the makers of this series? I'm not 100% sure on that, but she is quite litigious. So no, we get to see the zookeepers. We speak with Jeff Lowe, who eventually took over the zoo, and some of the other characters here. But I can give you my main reactions, but let's start with you, James. What were some of your main takeaways after watching that?
Well, docuseries aside, I was just impressed alone by the fact that, one, they were able to get so many people from the documentary to talk, and two, during the age of pandemic, everybody's social distancing, that we have the technology now to be able to get everybody had AirPods, so I'm pretty sure everybody was sent a camera, or a phone, or the Apple AirPods, whatever, and they were able to do this another episode that came out maybe just a couple weeks after the docuseries premiered. So I was impressed by that alone. I know initially you said...
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I feel like they put this together pretty hastily because it was such a sensation. And I think that there was such a clamoring for more content. And it's obvious. It's just so funny. It's obvious that they put this together in the time of Corona. Because, like you said, they sent them the phones and the AirPods and all of this stuff, and Joel McHale is hosting from his home, so that alone was interesting. But I'm sorry I interrupted. Go ahead.
Oh no, yeah. Just to add to that, some of the characters that are saying that nowadays, now that they're locally famous, that they're being stopped at Walmart and all these other places, even though there's a 6 foot, keep your distance away from other people. People are still wanting to get up very close to them and take a picture. But yeah, we learned so many different new things and different perspectives of what happened in the docuseries.
Yeah.
One, this may have been the biggest, not now looking back, it kind of makes sense, but one of the biggest things or biggest takeaways I got from the final episode was according to Rick Kirkham, the producer of the reality TV show. According to him, he says Joe Exotic is scared of big cats, and that the cats that you see him on video in or with, they're either blind or sedated. And so he's not this real big wild cat tamer that he makes himself out to be.
Yeah, that it's all a sham, really, that Kirkman, the man you mentioned, was the one who came up with the title of Tiger King. And it was all for this reality show that he was creating, and that he wanted to sell to the networks, and that he was going to make his millions off of, but it was a character. It wasn't really who he was. And that's that he's actually afraid of the big cats. And then you go back and you watch it, because I went back and I watched a few more episodes. Yeah. And it seems to kind of line up, because you only ever see him with the babies, with the baby cats, and then when he's in the cages with the giant, with the full grown tigers, I was looking at them very closely, and you could see like they were kind of like almost struggling to move. So it does kind of line up that they might have been sedated while he was in there, and that's just Tiger King. It's a lie, James. It's a lie.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought his whole persona would have been driven by ego and whatnot? Not Joe Exotic.
I know. And I think that the other thing that really came out of it, and I believe it was mostly from Kirkham's interview also, the fact that there was a lot more abuse of animals that happened on that zoo than we actually learn about in the original docuseries. And so Kirkman shares a story about, and he said that he had this all on tape. He had everything on video, everything, because Joe Exotic wanted everything filmed, even his cruelty. So he tells the story of a woman who brought her horse to the zoo and was, in tears begging Joe to take the horse because she couldn't care for it anymore, and he had all this land, and please, please, please take care of my beloved horse. And he said okay. And the second she leaves, he's like, get the cameras, and he shoots and kills it and feeds it to the tigers. And it's just cold cruelty. He is no folk hero. James is essentially the what we take away from the after show interviews here. And I think one of every single person that they interviewed, even the people who seemed to be the most loyal to Joe, they all unanimously agree that he is exactly where he needs to be in prison right now.
Yeah,
and it's very ironic, because he's loving the attention, but he doesn't get to enjoy the fame that he always wanted.
Saf is the one who got his arm bitten off, and even though he had mentioned how how off the books and how wild and how horrible some of the animals were treated, that she couldn't help, and this kind of played into the part of the mindset that how brainwashed these people are, or how overwhelmed they are with their person's charisma or character, that she still kind of defended him, saying, well, he made us Thanksgiving dinner every year, so they didn't show as much of the good things that he did, which I don't know how many meals you can make me. There's a certain point of what you do and how you treat other animals. There's no making up for that.
Yeah, that would make up for just, killing adult animals, or killing the tigers just for the sake of cage space, or because they got a little too big and we don't need these cubs anymore, and all of that. So I think a lot of people came out of this thinking that, hey, this is just pure entertainment. But, the sense I got from this bonus episode and from these interviews was, hey, this was a real thing that happened, and it was really awful. And he belongs behind bars. I don't know why they chose Joe McHale, of all people, to host this, and I don't know if you felt the same way, but he was... I wish we'd almost gotten a real journalist up in there and asked more deep questions, because he's trying to be funny and it doesn't strike the right tone, and it's he's making jokes to the campaign manager, his name escapes me at the moment, and then the guy's talking about how he watched the light leave Travis's eyes after he shot himself, and it's oh god, just the tone was not right with Joe McHale, hosting this thing. And there were a lot of hard edits. You could see they edited a lot of it, and so I would have really liked to have seen like an actual journalist doing this and see like an even longer form, of the interviews without the edits, because I want to see what these people really had to say.
Yeah, I think he did an okay job, but I completely understand. For example, when he was talking to Jeff Lowe, when he was asking him, how do you feel you were portrayed on the documentary, and Jeff responded, he feels like he was painted to look like the villain of the documentary. But I would have loved if Joel would have asked him, so what about the whole pretending you're a millionaire and promising Joe that you're going to help him, at the very end switching and practically stealing the zoo from under him. I wanted him to ask that and answer to that, but no, that didn't happen. Also, I know with Jeff and his wife and the whole nanny situation, I wish Jeff would have also kind of pressed that a little more and asked, why is that okay, or what is really going on? And I don't know. I feel like Jeff got let off very easily when it came to the interview portion.
Oh, I agree. And so there's supposedly a whole myriad of criminal enterprises that guy is associated with, but I almost wonder if maybe for legal reasons there were some topics that they couldn't touch on or couldn't air, what certain answers were. I don't know. But yeah, I wanted more hard-hitting questions, James. I didn't want these like, oh, I'm trying to be funny and ha ha ha, what was it like getting your arm chewed off? Like, oh my God, dude.
Now, where the real hard questions came from, I guess Jeff Lowe last night or yesterday sometime, he did a Reddit AMA. And in the comments, my girlfriend was reading them out loud, and they were just calling him out, his previous, his shady business deals, his alleged assaults, or he may have been found guilty, I forget. But during the AMA, everybody was letting their opinion, their true feelings of on the Joe. They let them out, and they did not spare him because, I didn't look at the whole AMA, but I imagine he didn't walk away very happy with the response or the reaction.
Well, yeah, that's another thing. These people are now famous. They've been isolated on the zoo all these years, and they're just normal folks, and a lot of them have rap sheets, and now they're dealing with this little bit of fame, and it's just odd. It's just they all thought it was pretty odd, and I don't know, but it's definitely worth watching if you want to kind of see where these folks are right now. I wanted to know more about, like, okay, what's next? What's happening at the zoo? What are you going to do with your life? Are you moving on? Are you getting therapy? Those kinds of things. But it's definitely worth watching. Tiger
I
King
am glad.
continues.
I am glad that it did kind of put a bow on it, because one complaint that I did hear was at the very end of the docuseries, it kind of rushed the ending, where it gave you this huge list of like, okay, this is what happened, this is what happened, and this is what happened. A lot of open endings. And so one thing I like, it is something. It wasn't perfect, but at least we got a little resolution to this. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I want to know more about holding these people to the fire, like the Doc Antle types, and Joe, who's already going to be in jail for 22 years.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised Carol Baskin did not show up. After all of America believes that she killed her husband.
Oh, la pobre! I'm still Team Carol. Okay. I'm still totally Team Carol. I watched the docuseries again, and I'm now even more Team Carol.
Really?
Okay. James, like, she's the only one that actually cares about the animals.
No, but everybody there are other people. The guy who looked like Motley Crue, he talked about, all of these big tiger, and I think Saf also talked about how all of these big tiger, exotic animal sanctuaries or zoos, they're all the same. And I do believe that, and I think that people are taking advantage of. I feel like Carol's part of the problem. And I'm still, again, very hesitant of what she knows also about her husband's disappearance.
I would like to see these crazy people not allowed to own and breed these massive cats. They should be in the wild. If they're raising money, it should be for conservation. It shouldn't be for their private menagerie of animals that they are not going to take care of. So, I mean, I can be down with that message. And, my husband's like, you don't care that she killed her husband. You think you think he had it coming. I'm like, well, maybe he did. I don't know. It's just
oh, so you're that type of person.
She's just the least evil. She's just the least evil, you know. And of all the narcissists and megalomaniacs on this show.
No, I would say the campaign manager. He's the least evil. He needs therapy apparently,
really?
And that sucks that he didn't get a.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess so too. But you know, you'd be kind of crazy not to have reconstructive surgery to save your arm. But that's just me.
Yeah.
But
overall, the campaign manager definitely needs therapy. Yeah, I'm sure there's a GoFundMe right now for that guy. So
I wouldn't doubt it.
All right, we don't want to give everything away, so go watch the episode and all of that jazz. So. And that's not the only thing to look forward to, James.
No, because after this pandemic, when the movie theaters open up again, or maybe it'll be on video on demand. That's another question I'll ask you. Just what your theory is of the future of movie making. Because if we're in this pandemic, or we're in some form of social distancing till 2022, some people are saying that. Some experts. It's interesting to see. Will big budget movies like another Avengers or another big film like Doctor Strange, can that be made with a limited staff or crew? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, so Sam Raimi.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Sam Raimi. Apparently,
changing gears.
Yeah, he confirmed this week that he will indeed be directing the sequel to Doctor Strange 2 Into the Multiverse of Madness. So I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
I'm super excited.
Replacing the first director who dropped out unexpectedly. Oh my goodness, the name escapes me right now. But yes, Sam Raimi of the original Spider-Man trilogy. He is revered in nerd world, and in the world in general. Everyone loves the original Spider-Man trilogies. They were sort of the gold standard of superhero movies until the Marvel started coming along and all of that. The Multiverse of Madness, it's supposed to be the first horror film, and he has some horror creds also. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. He's, of course, directed The Evil Dead and the sequels to that, too. And one thing I love about Sam Raimi is that, and you get a glimpse of a short horror sequence in Spider-Man 2, one of my favorite comic book movies ever, right up there, the very top three. In the scene, in the hospital scene where Dr. Otto Octavius, he transforms or loses his mind and becomes Doc Ock, really, in the surgeon room. That whole sequence of him going after the doctors and the nurses, that's a straight out of a horror movie. That's like an Aliens kind of evisceration of people by this monster. And so he has this great ability to, as well as his previous history with the Evil Dead and series, this history of being able to mix very entertaining and very horrific sequences that are, I don't know, just fun to watch. And so I was really excited when we found out months ago that he was in talks of doing this, but apparently he was interviewed recently and he kind of not dropped the ball, or he dropped a very big hint saying that, during the first making of Spider-Man, the first one, when they're trying to find out the name for this new villain with 8 arms, what to call him, J. Jonah Jameson. He's around, spouting out these names, and one of the names that's recommended to him is Doctor Strange, and then he goes like, "Oh, that's a great note. That's a great one, but it's already taken." And so it's fun. It's funny to see all these years later that I guess in the Sam Raimi universe, Doctor Strange is out there. Doing his own thing, but it's kind of full circle, and he's directing his own Doctor Strange movie. So that I'm super excited about.
That's wonderful. So speaking of, moments in the film that really make you feel something and that get you engaged and excited, one of my favorite parts of, I believe it was the original, I don't know if it was Spider-Man 1 or Spider-Man 2, when he's on the train and then he stops the train. That was 2.
Yeah.
Okay. But when he stops the train and all of this, and then his mask is off, and they carry him through the train, and they're looking at his face, and it's like, he's just a kid. Like, that actually
he's just
made
a 30-year-old
kid. He's just a 30-year-old kid, yeah. Yeah, Tobey Maguire was never really age appropriate for Peter Parker, but that aside from the point, Yeah, I mean, though, that made me feel something. That made me feel something, and I feel like that's lacking in a lot of modern films. So I appreciate that. I'm excited to see what Raimi can do with Doctor Strange.
And kind of like Taika Waititi, he's a director that does take, chances. He takes risks, and so I'm looking forward to it. I feel like the movie is in really good hands. I feel if the Marvel, the MCU is able to attract more unique directors that have a unique eye and a unique way of storytelling, I think they're in good hands. I am curious, how they move on without Captain America, Tony Stark, and all these other.
I know they got rid of all of the big ones. They got rid of the.
Very curious to see how this happens, but with Sam Raimi at the helm, I'm confident that it'll be at least going off to a good start.
Yeah, you know what else I'm excited about, James? I'm excited about people following us.
You
subscribing
too?
to our I
thought
know,
I was the
right?
only one excited about that. Yeah.
About subscribing to our YouTube channel and following us on Twitter and looking us up on every major streaming service that we've got out there. We're on iTunes Radio. We're on iTunes. We're on iHeartRadio. We're everywhere that you listen to these wonderful podcasts. Everywhere that you find your podcast, we are there. You can see our faces. You can not see our faces. Yeah, take your pick. Take your pick. Come on,
if you're out for your walk on the sidewalk, because we know you're not doing anything at home, so might as well tune in.
Right? Exactly.
And if you do
You're
go out for
bored.
the walk on the sidewalk, you can listen to us, put some headphones in your ear.
Yeah, tell us what you think about Tiger King. Tell us what you think about Sam Raimi. And our favorite thing, tell us about Star Wars.
Yes.
What are we talking about, James?
We finally have. It's funny because it feels like for a while we haven't had real entertainment news, but we're getting some now, so that's good. But recently, Daisy Ridley, I guess she spoke openly about the shift in reaction to the new Star Wars trilogy, and even though she says that she noticed this not negative shift but more controversy surrounding the trilogy, she's still happy about it. We're also talking about what else are we talking about Star Wars?
The Colin Trevorrow script.
Yes, we're talking about that too. But which one do I go hammer down first?
Well, so about Daisy Ridley, okay?
Yeah.
About Daisy Ridley. The love, she wanted to know where the love went.
Yes.
Where did the love go? Where did the love for Star Wars go? And I would argue that, A, it died with Ben Solo.
Oh, okay.
And B, not to be dramatic, but I think it died with Ben Solo. And B, does she know the Star Wars fandom? I mean, we're awful. Not really. No, we're not awful. It's just, but there's always been controversy in the Star Wars fandom, so from the original trilogy, through today. And I think the one thing that The Rise of Skywalker really did accomplish, James, was bringing everyone together. The Reylos, the non-Reylos, everyone was brought together in how much they don't like this movie.
Yeah. And to be fair, and it did, after The Force Awakens, when The Force Awakens came out, the reaction was mostly positive. It was a good breath of fresh air, and people felt rejuvenated, myself included, about the new direction that Star Wars is going, or the direction that may be laid out, or what you're imagining. And so when The Force Awakens came out, big success, positive reviews overall, and then The Last Jedi happened, and that's when we noticed the big rift, the controversy, and everything that went along with that. We've gone in depth about it before, but that continued even more after The Last Jedi created so much anger and division, whether the movie was a masterpiece or whether it spat on the history of Star Wars. The third film, as you mentioned, it did bring people together when both sides really weren't happy, and that's not a good way to make a movie. And I understand what Daisy Ridley is talking about, that she mentioned back in her day when she was growing up, and even nowadays, if she watches a movie and she doesn't like it, she's not going to tweet about it. She may talk about it with friends or family, but she's not going to tweet about it. But she understands that nowadays on social media, more people are having communications that you would normally have with your best friend in private. They're having those conversations, but now it's all public. And so she believes that the more negative attention or more negative reaction does get and does get more attention and does make the news. But at the same time, she can't help but feel upset. You can hear it in her voice. She was being interviewed by Nina West on her podcast, and you can tell how disappointing it was that it wasn't as loved or appreciated as as she sees it, especially making the movie herself.
Well, there was obviously when you're making the movie, you're having a blast. I just feel like there's a disconnect there between how much fun she had with her fellow actors and putting together this real spectacular film. I'm not gonna it really was a spectacular visual film. But Star Wars is based in lore. It's almost got its own mythology. It's a deeply thoughtful series, and I felt like when the story doesn't honor that lore or the mythology, or doesn't focus on the character development, and it's just when the story and the characters are not right, the spectacle doesn't matter. And so that experience that she had making this super fun, amazing film doesn't really translate to the fans. You know what I mean? That's kind of what my take on where the disconnect is.
Yeah, and I understand that there's been controversy with every set of trilogies. Even when the Empire Strikes Back came out, there were people conflicted, not feeling that, that weren't necessarily happy with how that movie came out also, but obviously not to the extent of how we're hearing it nowadays. But when you look at things individually in each set of the trilogies, the prequels, that controversy came just because of obviously many, I wouldn't say bad decisions, but things that really don't make sense. A lot of that was left because of George Lucas. And George Lucas, though he has a great imagination and a great way to build worlds and universes and galaxies, he's not the best director, and he admits it. He says he himself he prefers editing. He's a big fan of editing films, while he is also a director. And so So the flaws of the first of the prequels lie, I guess, with George Lucas's his process of creating a film. With the latest set of trilogies, the controversy came not only from, obviously, it felt like much of the lore and much of the history was being ignored, but there wasn't a plan. George Lucas, he had a plan, even though it may have been kind of weirdly written or weirdly structured. George Lucas had a plan of how Anakin turns into Darth Vader. The final films, there was no plan. J.J. Abrams, he throws in all these mysteries to be solved later, possibly, and he figures it out as he goes. And the fact that we had different, directors, and the original trilogy had different directors as well, but I feel like they trusted the characters more than the story, and we didn't see that in the latest, iteration or in the final trilogy. And so I feel, yes, each movie has its conflicts, and people are not happy with certain things, but I feel like the final trilogy could have been avoided. The reaction and how it happened could have been avoided if this was really the end of the Skywalker trilogy. There should have been more love, more care, more character-based decisions and character-based developments. Yes. And I didn't see any of that.
No, exactly. But it could have been better. It could have been worse with Colin Trevorrow behind the wheel. And so we're actually starting to get a glimpse of what Star Wars would have looked like with him at the helm. So Colin Trevorrow just came out recently and confirmed that a lot of the leaks that came out ahead of The Rise of Skywalker were for his version of the film that would have been called The Duel of Fates. And it is very different. Very, very different. And so someone else on YouTube, his name is Mr. Sunday Movie, had a friend of his animate what they know about the Colin Trevorrow film, and you and I watched it. What did you think? What did you think, James?
Well, when you first sent me the link, I thought there were going to be minor changes. Maybe at the ending, though, they would change. Maybe Ben Solo lives, or Chewie dies. Small things, relatively small things like that. But the video that we saw with the script that we got, it's a completely different story. It's a completely different story, and I'm a little more inclined to, again, we can say, we could, judge these things in hindsight or with hindsight, but I would have been more interested, I think, in that version. It feels like it opened more with a team effort. Feels like Kylo was a lot more conflicted. It opens with Rey rescuing her pals that have been captured by stormtroopers, and it shows her new lightsaber, a lightsaber that we all imagine would be a double-sided lightsaber.
The double-sided lightsaber. Come on, man.
It seemed like a more fun and more fun story,
more true to the character. So yes, and then it follows both Rey's journey and Kylo's journey as they're both trying to figure out their place in the universe and really come to grips with their past and their future and all of that. So you've got Kylo, who's on Mustafar, which I would have loved to have seen, interacting with all of these items from Darth Vader, talking to Force ghosts, and, you really, like said, get that sense of conflict. And there was just a decided lack of ghosts, Force ghosts, of mythology, of Anakin, of Darth Vader, we needed the Darth Vader, we needed it so badly.
Yeah, and in this version, or I guess original script, or this version of the script, Darth Vader is able to speak. Oh no, I'm sorry. Luke Skywalker is able to speak to Kylo Ren as a Force ghost, and that's one thing that I was kind of confused, or I had thought about in the final film, where if Luke is a Force ghost, why doesn't he try to go to Ben and talk to him? Why doesn't he try to convince him this isn't the way, and try to bring it back to the light, or try to resolve whatever the issue was, instead of not doing that? Also, I appreciated how Palpatine is not alive in this version. That's great. Then this message that was intended for Darth Vader, Kylo Ren opens it and hears it and takes the message, to himself, or as for himself. And so I liked already Palpatine was dead. I liked that Luke Skywalker was actively trying to help Ben Solo. It would have been interesting and maybe really cool to see Anakin Skywalker come back and talk to Ben, maybe at the end, and that helped sway.
Yes,
a decision.
Bring it full circle, tie it all together. And I feel like with the version we got, they completely abandoned the character of Ben Solo. And, he's there with, like, Rey dying in his arms, and that would have been a great time for the Force Ghost to come around him and, you've come so far, and, and help him heal her, and, like, he's just completely abandoned, and then he dies. And that is not the right message of anyways, my opinion, that's not the right message for a beloved character who's the last in this lineage of 9 films. Like, you got to give him more closure than that. So
what would have been cool if, because now we know that with these new Force abilities, a Force ghost can grab physical things. If, say, Kylo Ren was dead, or vice versa, Daisy was dead, and they were trying to revive each other, but they couldn't, it would have been kind of cool to see Luke Skywalker put his hand on his nephew's shoulder to bring back Daisy to life, or vice versa. And so things like that. There was a lack of Luke Skywalker.
Missed opportunities. But there's some things in this Colin Trevorrow version that I did not like, that I decidedly did not like. Besides the fact that they maim Adam Driver's face.
His beautiful face.
The fact that at the end, they have Kylo and Rey fighting each other and, like, seriously harming each other. So he blinds her. And, I forget. What was it that they were going after?
Each other. I'm kidding. I forgot.
I forgot. But he blinds her, and then he kills her, and then he brings her back, and then he dies, and I do like the Force. Like them seriously maiming each other. Mm-hmm.
I like the sucking the life essence or the life force out of other people. That's a pretty awesome Force power that I would have been excited to see.
Oh, that's sort of like the blood bending from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I don't know if you watch that series, but yeah, it's like you can suck out their life essence. That would have been fantastic to see. A really great, like, dark side power. We see enough of the light side powers. Give me some really cool, crazy, dark side abilities. And the fact that in this version there's no Reylo. Rey ends up with Poe and kisses Poe and all of that. And, I would have hated that. But I feel like that version still would have had better character development and more true to the characters of Kylo and Rey up until that point, at least, and would have given more closure to the story and the universe, as a whole. So I'm putting my Reylo on the shelf. I think it would have been a better story. It's not only the Reylo that I like. I love Star Wars. I love the lore. I love the mythology, and I would have liked to have seen a more complete story that honored all of those things and the characters they created.
Yeah, and Colin Trevorrow, I'm not a big fan because I understand that he's made other big movies that just dropped the ball. I believe, I want to say, where is it? Jurassic World. I guess he wrote that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Let me see, because there's like a litany of films that he wrote for, and
I think he doesn't really get female characters. The films that he's created, I just hate the female characters. I don't really think he gets a woman's mind or emotions or sight. One of the things I really liked about The Last Jedi, it was all about a woman's gaze, and I think that it really spoke to a lot of women. But I feel like a maimed Adam Driver and Rey getting eviscerated, getting blinded and then just kissing Poe because she feels like she has to, that doesn't really speak to me as a woman. So I think he has trouble with the female audience. But other than that, I think he's a genuine Star Wars fan. I got the sense of that from the script.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say. That's it's a what could have been, and again, maybe this one wouldn't have been good either. And I'm pretty sure the people would have complained, as you had your own little issues with it too. So I'm pretty sure there's no helping.
It's almost like our expectations are too high, James.
Oh goodness! But again, I just I just felt characters were not given their due justice. No. So many missed opportunities. Thinking about it again makes me sad. I watched the original. I watched episode 4 this past week, and it's so great. Yeah. It's so great, and I'm still watching the continuing series of the Clone Wars on Disney Plus. So the final 7th season of the Clone Wars. So and that's helping me out. I love Ahsoka as a character. So
yes, that's very exciting.
Yeah.
I hear that they're going to be doing more with her, and then we've got the Obi-Wan Kenobi series to look forward to, and there are more things in the Star Wars universe that we can look forward to, and overlook the disappointing end of Skywalker.
Perfect. Well, if you've seen,
James.
Well, let me ask: if you've seen Colin Trevorrow's script version for, was it Mr. Movie Sunday?
Mr. Sunday Movie.
Mr. Sunday Movie. So if you've seen the video, what do you think? Do you like that version better than what we got with The Rise of Skywalker? Do you have your own version? Have you written your own script? We would love to hear. So many missed opportunities, but yeah.
It's okay, James.
Let us know.
Overcome.
Yeah, let us know what you think. Please leave us a comment down below. Unless you want to add anything else, I think this is the Hub on Hollywood.
If you've got a favorite Fix-It fan fiction, leave it in the comments. I want to read it.
Well, you have your own version too, right?
I've got a few. Galanko 732. Find me.
We'll put a link in the description down below.
Read my fan fiction. It'll make you smile, I promise. Sorry for the smut. All right. I'm James. I'm Jamie.
I'm James. You're Jamie. This is the Hub on Hollywood, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye-bye. I'm losing my mind.